Christian parenting.
Hey parents, are you looking for simple, meaningful, and fun ways to help your kids know, love, and follow Jesus? The Christian Parenting Store has exactly what you need. From scripture affirmation cards and devotionals made just for kids to prayer journals and customizable prayer cards, every resource is designed with your family in mind. These tools make it easier to weave faith into everyday life and give your kids a strong foundation in Christ. Don't miss the simplified guides. These are digital guides that have all the resources you need to learn about all the topics you care about most. Things like discipleship, identity, technology, and even politics, all from the best voices in Christian parenting. And if you are looking to help your kids strengthen their own relationship with the Lord and start building good faith habits, check out our kids' devotionals. There are 3 different options that your kids will love. And here's the best part. Every purchase helps Christian Parenting continue creating incredible resources for families like yours. So make sure you go over to cpgive.org to check out all the wonderful resources available. Again, get your family faith resources at cpgive.org. Hey friends, and welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm Steph Thurling, and I'm so grateful to be here with you today. Doing this podcast is by far my favorite part of this job, and I really love today's conversation, and I think that you're going to too. I'm sitting down with Annie F. Downs, and this is a heavy topic, but one that I'm asked about all the time, and so I think it's really valuable and important to talk about. So Annie and her sister wrote a children's book called Where Did TJ Go? And they wrote it after Annie's sister lost her son, TJ. So the book helps families navigate the loss of a child. If you have ever experienced any loss in your family and have had to explain it to a young kid, you know it's really hard. And for years, I've had friends ask me for book recommendations to help, and this is an excellent resource. Annie and I talk about community and faith and healing and tough questions and how do we support people during difficult times. We even discuss, are there animals in heaven? What do you think? Please share this episode with somebody you think it would help and go get a copy of the book as well. I hope that you leave this conversation encouraged in your faith because I know that I did. Hi, Annie. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Hi, Steph. Thanks so much for having me on today.
It is so good to have you here. I think this is going to be a really good conversation. It's a heavy conversation, but it's an important and a good conversation. And
Thank you.
in so many ways, also encouraging to our faith and just to ourselves. So we're going to talk about your book, Where Did TJ Go? Which is about infant and child loss and grief. And we'll get into all of that. But first, I want to just jump right into talking about you and your family. And because family is always important on this podcast, but it's really important because this book was inspired by your family. So I would love to hear a little bit about that. So tell us about you, what you do, and then tell us about your family.
Yes. So I am an author, podcaster, speaker. This is what I get to do full time, which is so fun. I love getting to be on other people's podcasts because I learn so much. So thank you for having me on. I live in Nashville, live part-time in New York as well. So I kind of go back and forth between the 2 cities right now. I'm not married yet and I don't have any kids, but I've been in family since I was born. So when you're saying what's the word you would describe your family, I think expansive is the word I would use to describe family because I do not have the traditional family I thought I would have at this point in my life. I'm 44 and thought I thought it would look very different than this. And instead of having the life I thought I would have, I have a great nuclear family that's really big. We have a lot of cousins that act like siblings. And I have a lot of friends who have brought me in like family. And so I feel like expansive is the word for how I've experienced family.
I really love that word. And I love that story too, because it's just so true. Like, I don't think anyone necessarily has the family that they really envisioned for themselves.
Certainly. No one has the life they thought they would have.
I mean, totally.
100%.
But it's always a story that God is writing and he always has a better plan.
That's right. And as we'll talk about today, there are sadnesses and tragedies. But if we're talking about this part of my life, how my life has been shaped by God, I would not do it any different. I promise you, Steph, I would not do it any different. I've had a couple of years where God has really profoundly invited me to see that the life he has given me is better than what I could have dreamed of myself. And I genuinely believe it.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's just really good encouragement for so many people just to hear.
Good.
So thank you. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about your family and your sister specifically, because like that is where you got the inspiration from this book. So tell us about what happened.
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit of that background.
Yeah. So I'm the oldest of 3 daughters. My sister Tatum is
In the
15.
middle of 3 daughters.
Are you? Okay. So you get it. So you're like my sister Tatum. She and I are 15 months apart. And then there's a baby who is 38, or so whatever. That is about 6 years younger. And then we grew up with a handful of our cousins that my parents also helped raise. And so like now when we do holidays and when we do family vacation, there are 6 of us, cousins and spouses and kids with my parents. So it's really, really fun. My sister, she is the co-author of this book with me. And about 2.5 years ago, she and her husband have one son named Sam, who's awesome. And about 2.5 years ago, they had another son named TJ. At 12 weeks, we knew TJ was sick and he had life-limiting diagnosis. And so for her entire pregnancy, that was our experience of, is God going to heal this baby? Is this going to be a different story? Are the doctors actually seeing what is true? Is there going to be a miracle here? And when TJ was born, it was all true, what the doctors had said. We got longer than we thought. A lot of children with the diagnosis don't live longer than hours or days. We got to be with TJ for 2 months, 56 days to be exact. And then he passed away. And in the process of my sister being pregnant stuff, we did not know how to help Sam, my other nephew, and our cousins that were young. We didn't know, like, how do we talk about this? Like, Tatum is pregnant and he's watching her belly grow, and there is going to be a chance that he never sees the baby that comes out of her. Now, that is not what ended up happening, but in month 7, 8, 9, that's what we were preparing for. And I don't have a lot of skills, but I can write books. And so we asked around first to see, like, what book do families use in this scenario? We've never been in this scenario. What's the resource? I was calling counselors. I was calling parents. I was calling parents who'd experienced loss. And no one had a gospel-centric book that they had walked their children through when it came to the loss of an infant. Now, there are a couple. There are some that are not faith-based. But we had a specific thing we wanted to tell and wanted to talk with Sam about, was like, hey, there's hope in this story, but here's the true story. David Thomas, who's a counselor, and he actually wrote a letter in the back of the book for parents. He runs Raising Boys and Girls with Sissy Goff and Daystar Counseling. And David Thomas said, make it actual, make it factual. And so I had, in the writing of this book that I wrote it for my nephew Sam, because we were about to walk through the loss of his brother. So I voice memoed. I felt like the whole thing downloaded from the Lord, I will say. The whole thing downloaded on a drive from Franklin, Tennessee to Nashville, Tennessee. It's 20 minutes. And so the whole thing downloads, and I'm saying it into my phone. I get home, I type it up, I print it out on my printer, I put a clip art on it because I'm a terrible drawer. I have no artistic ability. And I laminate it and give it to my nephew, Sam. And we thought that's what would happen. We thought that's all that would happen with this book. And as TJ's life continued on and then he was getting sicker and sicker and we knew he was dying, he passed away in August on a Wednesday morning. And a few months after that, I sent it to my agent and I was like, hey, this might really help other families too. And Tatum's willing to be the co-author and help me make it right for a parent. I could write it as an aunt, but I needed her to help me write it like a parent. And they were willing to share their story. And so that's where Did TJ Go came from. And it's a way that we get to honor his life and honor who he was in our family and how he changed our family, and also see some redemption in a really sad story.
Yeah. I don't know if I just missed this, but I don't think I realized, I want to get more to talking to your kids about loss too, but I don't think I realized that he was diagnosed at 12 weeks.
Yes.
So how did you as a sister, how did you support your sister through that?
Yeah, it's really hard, obviously. I mean, I remember they were in Nashville. My family lives in Atlanta and I live in Nashville most of the time. They were in Nashville for an event with me and she was really pregnant. It was May and she was having the baby in June. And everyone kept coming up and talking to her when are you due? What are you having? Do y'all have a name? All the things, of course, people do because they're being caring and they're being loving. And I just remember watching that over and over and being like, this has been her whole pregnancy. And her whole pregnancy, TJ's been sick. And so what does it look like as you're to step into it with her as a family? I mean, we just kept praying for a different story, moving our calendar around to be there when we needed to be there. Once he was born, Steph, it was pretty much all hands on deck. He was in the NICU for 3 weeks, and then he was in a hospice at their house for 5 weeks and 24-hour care, which was insanely intense, as you can imagine. And so it was just all hands on deck at that point, as best you can. And I just wanted God to do something different than he did. That's the truth of it, is I wanted. And even when TJ was born, every night I'd go to bed at my parents' house because I was in Atlanta helping as best I could where I could, particularly playing with my other nephew, Sam. We hosted Camp Sally Annie, which is my other sister's name. So the whole time TJ was in the NICU and Tatum and Jacob were at the hospital, her husband, we had Camp Sally Annie. So I bought an inflatable pool. I mean, that camp is not sustainable financially or energy-wise, but it was very fun with a 2-year-old for a couple of weeks. But I mean, I would lay in bed every night and be like, Jesus, he's not dead yet. You can change this. You can fix this. Like, what are you doing? You can do this. And he did it. And that was the hardest part, is walking with your family through where we're all believers and we've all given our lives to Christ. And to walk through what God could do and he didn't do was really hard.
How are you reconciling that now?
I feel a lot of strength around what we're taking back by making this book, not just for Sam and our cousins. About 2 months after TJ died, I got a sword tattoo. And part of it was because I was like, oh, if this is a war, you have awoken me. And so some of that is my reconciling of like, now I know what we're working with. And I'm not sure I knew what we were working with before. And now I know what we're working with. And so every copy of this book that lands in the home of a family that needs hope and help is a defeat for the enemy. And I love that stuff. I love that. So that's some of my reconciling, is I have a better view of the war we're actually in. Personally, between me and Jesus, it can be hard some days where I go, man, what do I do with you not doing what seems to have made a lot more sense than what happened? But he said, I mean, I'm sure your life has allowed this too, where you go, explain to me why you did what you did. Oh, you're not going to explain it to me? Okay, well, then I'm going to bring it up probably 55 more times this lifetime. And then, and so it just is, I mean, there's just a bucket of things that don't make sense to me. And TJ is a large part of that part of the story of my life.
And we're the lucky ones because we have a hope.
Do you imagine? No. How do people if this is what the world is like and there is no eternal hope, what is humanity about? What is going on? What a disastrous thing to have to be a person if there is no hope beyond death. I don't know how they do it. Maybe non-believers are stronger than me because I don't know how you do it. But thanks be to God that I've never had to know how to survive the death of a child without the hope of Jesus. I've never had to experience that.
Right? I mean, it's hard enough to just get through every day sometimes.
I struggle through breakups, Steph. I mean, are you kidding? Like, I'm crying my way through a breakup and needing the hope of Jesus. That isn't even the death of a sibling or a spouse or a kid or a parent. I mean, it's a breakup. So yeah, life is hard enough. Before the in-between massive traumas are little T traumas all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And without the hope of Christ, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. No, it's true. But I can't even tell you how many times, and I kind of told you this before we started recording, but I, just being in the field that I'm in, can't tell you how many times people have said, hey, my uncle died, or hey, my cousin or my grandpa died, or someone died. And I need to talk to my kid about this. And like, give me a book.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. I mean, like so many times, even just today, I was telling them about this interview and they're like, I can't wait to give that book to my sister who just lost a baby so that they can read it to her son. It's just a needed resource because there are books out there, but there aren't that many that really just like head on say,
this is what happened, and this is our hope, and this is, this is ABC, this is it. Because I think it can be really easy to kind of gloss over grief and death and loss when it comes to kids. Because you're like, oh, they're little, they're okay.
They're resilient.
Their kids are resilient.
Yeah.
They'll
that's right.
figure it out. But why is it so important to talk to our kids about this? Like David Thomas said, what do you say? Direct
Actual and factual.
Actual and factual.
Yes.
Why?
Why? Well, one of the things Tatum says is that when she wants families to have this book because she didn't have the strength or energy to come up with the start of the conversation every time. And so in a lot of ways, we get to use resources like Where Did TJ Go to give us the gift as the grieving adult of here is the go-between between what you need to know and what I can barely survive myself. So here is a book that will give us a conversation. And it's why we had David do that letter in the back to give more resources. But I mean, you remember this from being a kid. I remember this from being a kid. We feel when something is off. Like we know when something's off as kids. You can trust your gut. Kids have a gut. And I remember when my dad was part of the Big Brother, Little Brother program growing up. And he had a little brother that would come over and eat lunch with us come spend the weekends at our house, was a teenager. And he died in a car wreck when I was 3 or 4. So the exact age of my nephew Sam right now. And I remember the day we drove home and little Bill had died in a car wreck. We always called him Little Bill. Died in a car wreck. And my grandfather was standing in the driveway. I knew. I didn't know what had happened, but I'm telling you, my gut knew something was wrong. And my grandfather came over all the time. Like we lived in the same town. And so it wasn't his presence. It was something I knew. And so we've got to talk to kids about grief and mourning and death because they know. They know when you're sad. They know when you're mourning. They know when something has shifted in their life. And if we don't talk to them about it as kids, they figure out themselves the tools they need to self-soothe and to self-heal. And those tools very often, for me and maybe for you, end up being tools we use as adults that we do not need to be using. And so we can protect kids in some way. I mean, they're all human. They're all going to have bumps in the road. But there are ways we can step into grief and loss with kids when they're young that will hone their tools to have correct tools going into adulthood for facing grief and loss and death. And so we need to talk about it because they already know, and we want them to be healthy as they grow.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Patricia Heaton, and I'm thrilled to tell you about a film that will touch your heart and inspire your faith, The Unbreakable Boy. This is a story of hope, joy, and God's unshakable presence in our lives, even in the hardest times. Austin's incredible spirit and his family's journey of faith will remind you to cherish life's blessings, big and small. As parents raising the next generation, you'll see how love, gratitude, and courage can transform even the toughest challenges. Don't miss The Unbreakable Boy. It's the perfect movie for the entire family. Learn more at theunbreakable.boy.movie.
Do you wish that you knew what practices led to a healthier, more meaningful life? Because I know that I do. With all the information bombarding us, it can be hard to cut through all the noise and discern what's most important. But the good news is, health coach and wellness expert Caroline Fossil has spent the last decade researching what it takes to live a healthy, fulfilled life and create a home where everyone in the family can thrive. In her latest book, A Simply Healthy Life, Caroline shows you how to envision what it would look like for you to feel genuinely happy and healthy. She shares tips on how to fuel your body, create a clutter-free and non-toxic home, use spiritual practices, and how to set up your day with habits to reinforce your healthier choices. This book also includes mental health resources, recipes, discussion questions, and so much more. A Simply Healthy Life by Caroline Fossil is now available anywhere books are sold.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
I think that's so true. There's such a hard thing about balancing it too, right? Like you want to share, but you don't want to give too much information.
Right.
But it's so much to navigate. And so giving parents an easy tool to start is just such a gift. Like, do you feel like that was the main tool for your family to start some of the conversations? Was your little
With Sam? Yeah. I think, yes. I mean, even for me as his aunt, and we're really close. We FaceTime every morning while I'm putting my makeup on and he's eating breakfast because he's Eastern time zone and I'm Central, so it aligns. Yeah. So we're really close. And he's close with my other sister, Sally, as well, and my parents. He's an active part of our lives. And I wanted to talk to him about TJ. But my dad said at TJ's funeral that if crying over TJ was an Olympic sport, my dad and I were gold and silver. And it's true. I could barely communicate about him without tears, but I wanted to be a trusted parent and adult voice for Sam. Mm-hmm. And so having this and also, when you read books like, the places you'll go, you learn the rhythm of it. And, there's a book we read a lot as a kid called Jillian Jiggs, Maker of Wonderful, Marvelous Pigs. I can do about the whole book. As you learn where did TJ go, your emotions settle and it gives you a chance to read it and to read it in a way where I could settle into it and I could read it to Sam and he could point and go, can TJ really ride a giraffe in heaven? Maybe, probably. Tell me why he wouldn't be able to. What would make him not able to ride? Does Jesus really read books to kids? Yeah, let me tell you this part, Steph, you're just going to love this. There's a couple of little Easter eggs in the book that the illustrator did. One is a gift to me that I didn't know she was doing. And a couple are requests we made just for Sam and our family. But there's a page where TJ is sitting in Jesus's lap and he's reading a book to TJ. And he's reading one of my other kids' books to TJ.
Oh,
and the illustrator.
Yes.
The illustrator drew the other cover that she made as the book that Jesus is reading to TJ. And so Sam had questions about that and had thoughts about that. And so, yes, I think that's true for me in friendship. If me and a friend go see a movie together, it gives us something to talk about after the movie. And so I think it's really true with kids that having those go-between resources, it's why everybody does the sex talk with a book.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All the things that we feel are challenging to talk through, there is a resource that stands in the middle that helps open the door.
Yeah. Well, and kids can see themselves in the story. I lost my best friend when I was 10.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was just my first experience with death. I didn't really, grandparents died. My friend's grandparents died. My grandparents were still alive. So all of a sudden this person died. And I didn't really realize until I was older, that one of my coping mechanisms that I picked up as a kid was I read so many books about kids dying.
I bet.
So many books. Just
bet you did.
Every chapter book I could find that was tragic.
Yes.
My parents are probably mildly concerned. What is happening? She's reading the darkest things. But I was able to put myself in that book.
Yes.
Somebody else was feeling it too. And then all of a sudden I wasn't alone. Other people were doing it too. And I think that you're giving kids such a gift because they get to do that, but they get to put themselves in a book that's filled with hope.
Yes. Do you know what's wild, Steph? I was finishing another book that comes out in another year. You know how book writing goes. We have to write a lot of words a long time in advance before it comes out so that people can fix it. You got to have editors fix it. So I was finishing my next book and I was at a hotel in Vermont because I was in New York. I had to get out of the city because I wouldn't stop hanging out with my friends and get my job done. So I went to Vermont and I'm sitting in this inn and writing in front of the fireplace. And a woman who works at the hotel comes to speak to me. She says, I heard you're writing, what else, And so I tell her about the TJ book and she says, 32 years ago, my daughter died. Tells me the whole story, tells me all about her daughter, tells me her name, tells me the story, and says, I can't wait to read that book. And you think, oh yeah, she needs to put herself in this book too. Yeah. Even though it's been, and then of course, it just made me tear up. So we talked for 8 minutes. She's not there very long, but it's so meaningful to me that she would share that story with me. She leaves and comes back with a tray of cookies and muffins. If you're hungry, I thought you might need some. How tender, right? That she's just needed to tell her story. and then wanted to bring me cookies. And it meant, both of them meant the world to me. But there are so many of our friends listening who maybe had a miscarriage a decade ago, or who lost a child in a tragic way within the last 20 years. And they need to sit in this book and go like, and see themselves. One of the things Jenny Poe did, who's the illustrator, that just was incredible, is there's kids all over the scenes in heaven. And so there's a world where there's a kid on a page that looks just like the kid that you don't have with you on earth anymore. And so it's those little nuggets all throughout the book that go, oh yeah, I wonder if that's what my kid's doing. I wonder if TJ and my kid are friends. I wonder if they're riding giraffes. I wonder if they're riding bikes. I wonder what they're doing, you know? And I think we need that. We need to put ourselves in books like that. I did the same.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the hope of heaven.
Yeah.
Let's talk about heaven, which is why I love this book, is it just
Thank you.
It points us there, points us to the truth of that. So how do we talk to our kids about heaven? Because obviously we don't really know what it looks like. Are there giraffes? I don't know. My brain, sometimes my kids will ask me and I'm like, well, let's talk about this. And I'm like, stop.
The thing we know is we know there are trees, right? Because there's a tree in the end. And we know there's a new heaven and a new earth coming. And so very often what I have studied and what I think, what I've read, is there's a lot of what we see now that will be part of what we see. So gardens make a lot of sense. And I mean, streets of gold, right? Like there's enough descriptions that we can picture something. The fun part will be we can't picture everything.
Yeah.
But if people are healed, if there are no more tears, if we are the bride of Christ, there is still and when Jesus was resurrected, he was in a new body. Mary didn't even recognize him for some reason, right when she saw him. So there is something about resurrection. There's something about the thing after death that we look enough like us that we're us, but there's something that's different too. Every tribe, tongue, and nation will bow before him. That means we still look like our tribe and still speak our tongue and we're from our nation. And so there is going to be variety in us in heaven as well. So for me, when it came to writing and dreaming up, what are the things that TJ could be doing in heaven? I took all the weaknesses that cost him his life on earth and I strengthened them in heaven. So his lungs, his heart, his eyes, the things that were not strong here, his muscles, all that to me in heaven will be strong and will be strengthened. And so he does ride bikes and climb trees and, our kids in heaven, I don't know. But Jesus said, come to me like they come to me. So there's something about our childhood, childlike nature that is going to remain important forever. So to me, it's fun to dream up and to think about and to come as close as we can to what we theologically know. Will we ride giraffes? I certainly hope so. I certainly hope they're animals. Animals feel too creatively interesting of what God has done to be this part of earth that we don't see anymore. And I mean, you read in Isaiah the visions of the angels and what the angels look like, and they have heads of lions and they have wings like eagles. There's a version of all this there. Like God made eagles because he had angels that look like eagles and he gave us an earth version, right? So it is all there in scripture. We just don't totally know how it plays out, but man, it plays out good. And it is the long part, Steph. This is the short part. That is the long part that we get to look forward to.
Okay, I have, as a side note, because we could probably have a whole nother podcast on this. I've gone back and forth on are there animals in heaven?
So what do you think?
Well, I have decided that yes. Basically because of what you
news.
Said. They're just too good not to be there.
Yeah, that's right. They're just too much a part of scripture to imagine that they would not be a part of what this bigger story God's telling. So
think about my middle son loves penguins, and we just always talk about how penguins just make life better. No one's mad looking at a penguin.
Right.
How could that not be in heaven?
That's right. I think the more fun hope I have around it is it's more Lion, Witch, in the Wardrobe than we realize. That there's more communication possible. There's more. We know what they know. And right now we guess what animals know. They talk about how smart whales are, how smart elephants are. And so you kind of go, oh, man, I can't wait to know how smart they actually are. What do they actually know? We'll see. It's a fun. And the days that it feels impossible to survive what we're having to survive here, which it does for some of our friends listening today, it is fun to go, okay, but on the other side, if this is the broken part, what's the put together part? And the put together part is a new earth and a new heaven. It is not, we aren't going to another planet. It's a new earth. And so I'm pretty into that.
Okay, let's speak to that kind of to wrap us up. Like there are people listening who are struggling in their own grief, whether that is a child, a miscarriage, a spouse, like a parent, a friend. So many people are managing grief, new grief or past grief, because grief is not linear. It's sneaky. Like you never know when it's going to pop up.
What I would give if we could order it linear. It'd be such an easier experience if we just ticked off the different levels and had it done.
Like, it will continue to get better for the rest of your life. And then someday you won't be sad. Like that would be
really what I wish. Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way. Because again, we have a broken world. So how do we even begin to manage living in a world with good news and sad stories?
Well, I think we tell ourselves the truth that there are sad stories. And that kind of, there's a counselor here in Nashville that says a lot, Stephen James, he says, life is tragic, but God is faithful. Sorry, he says life is tragic and God is faithful. And so I think the way we survive is by telling ourselves the truth that life is tragic and God is faithful. And both of those will keep playing out for every day that we are on this planet. And so that has helped me a lot. I was saying earlier to some friends here in the podcast studio, we were talking about this. And I said, even for me, I couldn't have written this book 10 years ago because I hadn't done the work I needed to do to be able to hold grief and joy at the same time. And now I have. Now I've done the work and going like, no, I actually understand that they both sharpen each other and brighten each other and they matter to be together. It's what we learned in Inside Out, right? Is that they actually need to both exist. And so that's my encouragement to anybody listening who's in the middle of grief. For starters, it is acute and it will get less acute. Grief is not linear, but time partnered with God does heal. Time alone does not heal, but time partnered with God absolutely heals. I think that's important to remember. But holding grief and suffering together, allowing yourself to laugh, allowing yourself to do something fun, go to the movies, go to the park, get outside. Like I ended up when TJ was sick, was already at home with Tatum and Jacob and our family. I had planned to go to Disney World with a family that I'm very close to here. And I said to my sister, do you want me to cancel this? I do not have to go. It's 3 days. I can totally stay here. And she was like, you really need to go. In the middle of this, if you can go, go. And it's true. I mean, I cried with them. I laughed with them. But it was good to take a deep inhale and exhale from the grief for 3 days and then go back to it. If you leave it and never come back, that's escapism. We got to balance relief and escapism. But that would be my encouragement is find a way to get some relief in the middle of your grief and trust that it will not last forever. It will lighten. It will. I don't know that it goes away. I have not stopped missing TJ. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if it goes away, but I think it morphs and lightens. And then at some point, like with us 2 years later, it takes on a really important purpose that may help a lot of people.
Yeah. When my friend died, I was laying on my couch, just a mess. And my mom came in and she took a piece of paper and she wrote on it, she wrote TTT. And she said, things take time.
Wow.
She said, this will never go away, but it will get better, but it's going to take a long time. And God has redeemed my story. God has redeemed TJ's story and made it into good.
Yeah,
for
that's right.
his purpose, because he's faithful to do that. And that's where the hope is. And I love that you focus on that and point people to that. It's just so valuable and so needed. Needed. Yeah.
I really appreciate that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're coming to an end on our time, even though I wish that we were not. But to wrap us up, I would love for you to share what you already shared so many good things. But what is one thing that you want every parent to know when they leave this podcast?
Well, I'm going to cheat and do two.
That's fine.
I'm going to do one on topic and one off topic. The on topic thing I would say to every parent is you're allowed to grieve too. You're allowed to grieve too. There's ways to do it in front of your kids and not do it on your kids. As they say it, Raising Boys and Girls, David and Sissy say you can do it with your kids, not on your kids. There's a way to do that. So you're allowed to grieve too. You do not have to push through on behalf of saving your kids from sadness because you aren't actually saving them from sadness. You can't. And so I would say that matters. And then from my specific seat as an aunt and as a not married yet person, the other thing I'd say to parents is let us in. Your single friends want to be a part of your village. Let us be a part of your village. Like, let us be a part of, invite us to things, invite us to dinner, invite us to the plays, invite us to the musicals, invite us to the sporting events. Like, don't say no for us because you think we don't want to be there. We many of my single girlfriends, particularly late 30s and up, we recognize that we have the opportunity to step in and do some of the mothering we've always wanted to do alongside our best friends who are parenting their kids. And so we have the gift of mothering, and some of my friends that are dudes have the gift of fathering, and they want to do that. And we want to be a part of what's going on in your family and in your world. So invite us in. Let us be part of your village.
Thank you so much for saying that. I think my brother-in-law, he is single. He doesn't have kids. And he is like the light of my kids' lives. Like he is involved. And my kids are pretty young, but I'm like, I know someday they're going to call up Uncle Spencer over my husband to talk something through.
Right. That's right.
I'm like, so important that he is in their life and has so much to offer.
Yeah.
So we have to make space for that and not feel like we're burdening.
That's right. Don't assume you're burdening us. Trust. The reality is you have to trust the single people in your life that they're healthy enough to say no. If they're not, that's not your problem. That's not your business. That's their problem that they're not healthy enough to say no and they need to say no. They'll learn. But trust that people aren't lying to you. When you ask, do you want to come to dinner? And they say yes, they have factored in that you have children.
Yeah.
And they love them.
For them being kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a good reminder. We should probably do an episode on that too.
Anytime. I would love to. I love talking about how it has changed my life that families have let me be part of their village. I mean, Christmas Eve is a great example. I stay in Nashville for Christmas. We do Christmas a couple of days after in my family. And Christmas Eve, it's me and 4 families. And and the kids do not think it is weird at all. It is far weirder to them when I bring a date around because they're like, they call me Crazy Annie. They're like, Crazy Annie, what is this? Who is this guy? They are very used to when our families get together, Annie's there too.
Yeah.
That is their norm. And that is because the parents have made me a part of the village.
And that's what the body of Christ is supposed to be.
It's beautiful. It's such a gift to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing everything today. Again, I appreciate it. I cannot wait to order 1 million copies of this book just to have.
Yeah. My sister and I keep saying we didn't want to need it. We wish nobody needed it. We are so hopeful that everyone who needs it gets it.
Me too. I'll be praying over this release. So thank you,
friend.
Thank you so much for joining me. I have links for everything in show notes. Again, this is an incredible resource for navigating any loss with young kids, but especially the loss of a sibling. Please reach out if you have any questions. You can email info@christianparenting.org and I will get back to you. I hope that you have a wonderful week. May you feel the hope of heaven this week. Life is heavy and busy, but Jesus is constant through it all. He is our ultimate hope, our ultimate protector, and our ultimate guide. May you feel his presence in every moment, good and bad this week. He is with you in all of it, and he loves you unconditionally.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.